Welcome back to Conversion Bible. Today we're going to do a deep dive into A/B testing for Shopify. Sometimes just a tiny tweak to your store can lead to like a big jump in sales.
Yeah.
That's the magic of A/B testing. And today we're going to unlock some of that magic. And we're going to be using the insights from Shopify A/B testing, a complete guide for beginners, the Conversion Bible, to help us along the way. You ready to ditch the guesswork?
Absolutely. It's really kind of remarkable how many Shopify stores are just kind of leaving money on the table simply because they are not A/B testing.
So let's just get down to basics here. What exactly is A/B testing? How does this whole control versus variant thing actually work in the context of Shopify?
Okay, so picture your product page. That's your control, right? That's like your baseline. And now let's just say you have this hunch that a different layout might do better. You create a modified version, and that is your variant, and you basically show those two versions. To separate groups of visitors, you track which one performs better based on like your goal, right? Is it add to carts? Is it sales? Whatever it is.
Okay, I get the concept. But do small changes really have that much of an impact?
Oh, you would be surprised. There's this classic study where they simply changed a button's color from green to red, and it led to a 21% increase in conversions. It turns out red creates the sense of urgency. So even subtle tweaks like that can really tap into these psychological nuances and make a big difference.
Wow, that's amazing. So it's about finding those psychological triggers.
Yeah.
But how do we know that these results aren't just random chance? Like, how do we ensure that?
Yeah, that's where statistical significance comes in. And you probably remember this from like high school stats class.
Yeah.
We aim for at least a 95% confidence level, meaning there's only a very, very tiny chance that those results happened randomly. And this is why sample size is really crucial. You need enough data from both your control and your variant groups to be confident in the findings.
Interesting. There's a real science to this. So walk me through planning my first A/B test. What are the steps?
Okay, first things first. Get super focused on your objective. Don't just say, I want to improve my store. What specifically do you want to achieve? Do you want more email signups? Do you want a higher average order value? More sales, obviously. Once you have like a really crystal clear objective, then you tie it back to your business goals so that you're making sure that your testing efforts are strategic.
Makes sense. So don't just test for the sake of testing, right? So then what's the hypothesis, right? I vaguely remember that from science class.
Exactly, yeah. You're basically saying, we believe this change will lead to this outcome because of this reason. But don't just, pull this out of thin air. You want to base it on like real research, dig into your Shopify analytics, look at your customer feedback, analyze your heat maps, even watch like real users navigating your store.
Okay, so let's just say hypothetically, my heat map shows people are missing my add to cart button. My hypothesis could be, we believe changing the button to a brighter color will increase clicks because it'll just be more noticeable. Am I on the right track?
You are spot on. You have a specific change, right? You have a predicted outcome, and you have a reason. That's based on data. That's a solid hypothesis.
Great. Now, how do we actually create these A/B tests on Shopify? What are like our options?
Okay, so Shopify, it does have some built-in capabilities. If you're on Shopify Plus, you can use their theme testing feature to compare different theme variations. So that's great if you're doing like a big design overall.
And what about those of us who are not on Plus?
Don't worry, you can still do URL testing on any Shopify plan. It's basically you're duplicating a page, making the changes. And then you use a tool like Google Analytics to split the traffic between the original and the variation. It is, I will say, a bit more manual and a little limited, but it definitely gets the job done.
Got it. So smaller tweaks. Or I guess just a more user-friendly approach might be those third-party apps.
Exactly, yeah. Apps like Optimizely, VWO, Convert, they're like really fantastic options. And they usually involve adding just a little snippet of code to your theme. And they give you a lot more flexibility, way more advanced analytics than you get with like those native Shopify options.
And of course, if you're a coding wizard, you can always go the custom development route, right? Using Shopify's liquid language.
That's true, but that requires some serious technical skills. You're basically trading ease of use for ultimate control. You'd have to handle like all the analytics tracking yourself.
So choose your weapon wisely, right? Consider your technical skills, your budget. Now, let's talk about like what to actually test. Where should we really be focusing our efforts for like maximum impact?
Okay, I would say prioritize the elements that directly influence conversion. So we're talking headlines, product descriptions, those call to action buttons, images, even how you're presenting the pricing. Those are all like prime candidates for A/B testing.
This podcast is powered by Growth Suite. Growth Suite helps you to run smart discount campaigns on your store. test it for free on your Shopify store. Just land on the Shopify App Store now and test it for free.
And don't underestimate, I'd say, the power of the overall user experience. Testing things like your navigation, how your site responds on mobile devices, and, that checkout flow that can really significantly affect how smoothly people move through your store and ultimately how likely they are to actually buy something.
Yeah, it's about optimizing that entire journey, right? And speaking of journeys, yeah, we can't forget about mobile optimization because, mobile users, they're a different breed, right?
Sure.
So what are some things we should really be thinking about when we're A/B testing on mobile?
Right. Mobile users are often on the go. They're multitasking. They have way shorter attention spans. They're much more likely to abandon a page if it's slow or hard to use. So pay close attention to mobile-specific design elements. Make sure your buttons are touch-friendly. And then test that loading speed. I mean, even a delay of a second or two can make a huge difference.
So approach it with a mobile-first mindset, right? Think about how people are actually using their phones.
Yeah.
So any specific examples of what we might test on mobile?
Yeah. Think about different header designs, the style of your mobile menu, the prominence of your search bar, and even just the layout of your product cards, just to make sure that all the key information is, readily visible.
All right. Those are great things to test. So far we've covered the basics of A/B testing, what to test, some mobile considerations. But, for those who want to kind of take it to the next level, what are some advanced strategies they could explore?
Okay. Well, one really powerful technique is multivariate testing. So instead of just changing one element, you change several simultaneously. This helps you figure out how those different elements interact and uncover that winning combo.
So it's like A/B testing, but on steroids. Can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine testing different headlines, but you're also testing different product images at the same time to see which combination is going to lead to, the highest click-through rates. So you're testing multiple variables at once.
I see. So it's about finding those power synergies.
Yeah.
Between elements. What else is there?
Another advanced strategy is audience segmentation. Because different customer groups, they often respond differently to the same changes.
Right. Makes sense. You might tailor your messaging or design elements to resonate with first-time visitors versus loyal customers.
Precisely, yeah. Segmenting your audience and tailoring your tests to those specific groups allows you to get way more granular and personalized. And you uncover deeper insights.
Okay, now, this all sounds amazing in theory, but I imagine even seasoned marketers, they can still make mistakes.
Right.
What are some common pitfalls to avoid when you're A/B testing?
One of the biggest mistakes people make is testing too many elements at once. If you change a bunch of things simultaneously, it's impossible to figure out what actually had the impact, so your results aren't reliable. Stick to one element at a time for basic A/B testing.
Yeah, that's a really good reminder to keep that scientific method approach. What else should we watch out for?
Don't fall into the trap of ending your tests too early, because early results, they can be really misleading, because of random fluctuations. Always calculate your sample size and your minimum test duration beforehand and let the test run its course. Be patient.
Right. So, avoid those knee-jerk reactions based on incomplete data. Any other words of caution?
Oh, and be aware of confirmation bias, That's that pesky tendency we all have to favor information that confirms our existing beliefs, right? And it's easy to unintentionally interpret results in a way that supports, what we wanted to win, but that can lead us to making bad decisions. So document your hypothesis very clearly before the test starts, and be honest with yourself about the results, even if they go against, your initial hunch.
It's about being objective, letting the data speak for itself.
Absolutely. And don't overlook the technical side of things. Make sure your tracking is set up correctly to avoid inaccurate data. Test everything very, very thoroughly before you launch anything. And use your browser developer tools to verify those events are firing correctly.
All right, very solid advice. So we've covered planning, implementation, avoiding those common mistakes. What about analyzing the results? How do we actually make sense of all this data?
Okay, you start by identifying your key performance indicators, your KPIs. What are you ultimately trying to achieve? Are you going for conversions, revenue, add to cart rates? Then you want to look at your secondary metrics that provide context, right? Your click-through rates, time spent on the page, scroll depth.
So it's about looking at the big picture, but also those little details. And you also want to look at data over time,
right?
Not just like a snapshot at one point.
Exactly, yeah. Use those visualization tools, graphs, charts, heat maps, to spot trends and patterns over the duration of your test and segment your results. Look at how different user groups performed, like mobile versus desktop, new visitors versus returning. There might be some real gold hidden in those segments.
Yeah, I love that point about segmentation because you might discover a change that, works wonders for one group, but completely falls flat for another.
Yeah.
So let's say we've analyzed the data. How do we actually make decisions based on the results?
Okay, so if there's a clear winner, fantastic. You implement that winning variation and you keep an eye on the performance, just to make sure it's actually delivering in like the real world. But if the results are inconclusive, don't worry. First, double check your sample size. If it wasn't big enough, you might need to run the test longer. You can also look for patterns within specific segments. Maybe the change worked really well for mobile users, but not desktop, for example.
So even inconclusive results can still be pretty valuable, to guide our next steps. What about tests that we consider failures? Are those just a waste of time?
Not at all. Even failed tests tell us something about what's not resonating with our customers. So document those learnings, refine your hypothesis, and apply those insights to future tests. Every test is a learning opportunity.
That's a really great mindset shift, to see every test as a chance to learn and improve. But to really, I guess, maximize those learnings, we need to kind of create this testing culture within our organizations. So how do we go beyond just like running these individual tests and really make testing an integral part of like how we do business?
It starts with a testing roadmap, your long-term strategy that outlines your testing goals, your priorities, your resources. It's basically your testing master plan, and it needs to be aligned with your overall business objectives.
I really love that idea of having that structure and intentionality. So you're not just testing randomly. So what are like the essential components of a good testing roadmap?
Okay, so you want to map out the customer journey from the moment, someone becomes aware of your brand to the actual point of purchase. And you want to pinpoint those key points where you can optimize those conversions. Prioritize your tests based on like their potential impact and the resources required. And don't forget to schedule regular reviews, just to adjust that roadmap based on your results and any shifts, in your business priorities.
So it's a living document. It's always evolving. Now, creating a roadmap is one thing, but we also need like the right people and the right processes in place. So any tips for building a strong testing team?
Okay, so the structure, it depends on the size of your business. You might have dedicated testing specialists, or you might share the responsibilities across different teams. But no matter how you structure it, clear communication is key. Establish regular testing review meetings. Use standardized templates for proposing new tests, and create like a central dashboard to track all your ongoing experiments and share those results transparently.
All right, some great points there. So it's about fostering a culture of like transparency and collaboration around testing. And to really make it stick, we need to be effectively documenting our learnings, right?
Absolutely, yeah. You want to create a system for documenting every single test. Win or lose. Include your hypothesis, the variations you tested, the results, your analysis, and your key takeaways. This helps you build this valuable knowledge base that you can refer back to and share with your team. And it helps you avoid repeating, the same mistakes.
It's like turning those individual tests into like a collective body of knowledge that really drives those ongoing improvements.
Exactly, yeah. And don't keep those insights locked away in the testing team, Share them with everyone, marketing, product development, even customer service. The more you can integrate those learnings into your like overall business strategy, the more powerful your testing program becomes.
It's about making testing this like holistic endeavor that informs every aspect of your business. Now, before we wrap up this section, I want to touch on something we mentioned earlier, Growth Suite. This incredible app can really help you implement many of the strategies we've talked about today. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Of course. Growth Suite is this really powerful tool that is specifically designed for Shopify stores. And it offers like a whole bunch of features to help you optimize your store. It has built-in A/B testing capabilities, you get analytics dashboards, and it even has some AI-powered features to personalize the customer experience.
So it can really streamline your testing process and make it like so much easier to implement everything we've talked about today.
That's awesome. And the best part, it's available for free on the Shopify App Store. If you're ready to, kind of level up your Shopify game, I highly recommend you check it out.
I second that. Growth Suite can be a game changer for your Shopify store. Well, I think this has been a fantastic kind of overview, a deep dive into A/B testing. We've really covered a lot of ground, from the basics to like some pretty advanced strategies, and hopefully you're feeling inspired, to start experimenting on your own store. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought. What one element on your Shopify store are you going to test first? Think about what you've learned today, the potential impact that even these small changes can have, the power of data-driven decisions. Pick one thing, a headline, a button, an image, anything, and commit to running a test. You might be surprised by what you find.
That's a great challenge to leave our listeners with. It encourages action and experimentation.
Exactly. We don't want this to be just another episode, that you listen to and forget about. It's about taking this knowledge and putting it into practice.
And remember, start small. You don't need to, completely overhaul your entire store overnight. Pick one element, test it, analyze the results, iterate based on what you learn.
It's a continuous journey of improvement. The more you test, the better you'll understand your customers and really what makes them tick.
And that's the ultimate goal, right? To create an online store that truly resonates with your audience and, of course, drives those conversions.
Now, speaking of real-world examples, let's shift gears and dive into some case studies that really showcase the power of A/B testing in action.
I love case studies. They're so inspiring, and they really show how even these small tweaks can make a huge difference.
For sure. Let's start with a clothing retailer who is struggling with a really high bounce rate on their product pages.
Okay. They decided to test two different approaches to see if they could improve things.
Their original product page, it had like a standard gallery with just 4 images, and the descriptions, they were pretty technical. And the add to cart button, it was below the fold. You had to scroll down to see it.
Right. So for the variation, they decided to expand that gallery to 8 images and include some lifestyle shots, to show those clothes in context. They also switched to benefit-focused bullet points for the descriptions, and they made that add to cart button sticky so it stayed visible as you scrolled.
And the results, they were pretty impressive. The variation, it increased their add to cart rate by 24%, and their overall conversion rate went up by 16%.
Wow, that's a lot. And that translated to an extra $23,000 in monthly revenue just from, making those few tweaks to their product page.
It really highlights the power of, visual storytelling, right? Showing your products in a way that actually connects with your audience.
Yeah.
It makes it super easy for them to take action.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to another one. This time it's an electronics store that wanted to optimize their checkout process.
Okay, what was wrong with their original checkout?
Their original checkout had 3 steps, and the first thing you saw was this option to create an account, which, can be a barrier for some shoppers.
Yeah, for sure. What do they do to change it?
They tested this really streamlined single-page checkout with that guest checkout option prominently featured, so people could just buy things without having to create an account.
That's a really smart move.
Right. They also added those trust badges, near the payment options to kind of boost that shopper confidence, and they just simplified those form fields, so it was much quicker and easier to complete the purchase.
So did all of that actually work?
Their checkout completion rate jumped from 43% to 59%. I mean, that's massive.
It just shows how reducing that friction in that checkout process can have this really dramatic impact on your bottom line.
People are busy and they want things to be easy. Make buying from you as seamless and trustworthy as possible.
Absolutely. Okay, let's do one more case study. This one involves a home goods store that was testing different approaches for their homepage hero section.
Got it. So their original hero section was very product focused, featuring their latest collections and some discount messaging.
And what did they change for the variation?
They went with more of a lifestyle-focused approach, showcasing their products in these beautifully styled room settings.
Okay, so more aspirational.
Exactly. The headline was also benefit-oriented, transform your space. And then they really highlighted their value proposition, free shipping, free returns, that kind of thing.
So what happened? Did it work?
Their click-through rates from that homepage, they went up by 28%. And the conversion rate for new visitors increased by 17%.
That's amazing. It's a great example of how appealing to emotions and highlighting those benefits can be so effective, especially for first-time visitors.
Yeah.
who might not be familiar with your brand yet.
Absolutely. And, beyond these like specific case studies, there are also some like industry specific considerations for A/B testing.
Oh, interesting. So what might a fashion retailer test
Yeah.
versus, like, I don't know, an electronics store?
Okay, so a fashion retailer, they might experiment with like different types of model photography to see what, really resonates with their target audience. Or test different ways of presenting size guides and fit recommenders, just to make online shopping a little less daunting.
I see. And what about an electronics store? What would they be testing?
They might test different ways of like presenting product specifications or experiment with adding like educational videos to their product pages.
So it's about tailoring those tests
Uh,
to your specific industry and your audience.
Exactly. The key takeaway here is that A/B testing isn't a like one size fits all solution, right? You really need to think about what makes sense for your industry, your target audience, and like your specific business goals.
And the beauty of it is it gives you the data you need
Yeah.
to make those informed decisions instead of just relying on, gut feeling.
You're basically turning your website into like this giant laboratory where you can constantly experiment and learn what works best for your customers.
Now, we've talked a lot about, like the nuts and bolts of A/B testing, but I think it's important to like kind of step back and think about the bigger picture. What does it actually mean to build a testing culture within your organization?
Right. It's about going beyond just, running these individual tests here and there and making testing like a fundamental part of your company's DNA.
So it's creating this mindset of continuous improvement where everyone on your team feels empowered to ask questions, experiment, learn from that data.
Exactly. And it really starts with leadership. If the people at the top aren't on board with the value of testing, it's going to be really hard to create that culture.
They need to be the champions of testing, right? They have to provide those resources and celebrate those wins, no matter how big or small.
And it's not just about the wins, right? It's about learning from every test, even the ones that, maybe don't go exactly as planned. Because even those quote unquote failed tests can provide valuable insights.
It's all about iterating, right? Constantly refining your approach based on that data you're gathering and building that knowledge base of what works and what doesn't.
Okay, so let's get practical. What are some like tangible steps for building a testing culture in an organization?
Yeah. How do we actually like make this happen?
First things first, you got to create that testing roadmap that we talked about earlier, right? It's your kind of your long-term plan for A/B testing. It outlines your goals, your priorities, how you're going to like allocate your resources.
Like a blueprint for testing success. Okay, what should we include in this roadmap?
You want to map out the customer journey and identify those key conversion points where you can optimize. Prioritize tests based on their like potential impact and the resources required to actually implement them. And don't forget to schedule regular reviews so you can like adjust that roadmap based on your results and any changes in your business priorities.
Makes sense. So how do we actually prioritize all these potential tests?
Right.
Are there like frameworks that we can use?
Yeah, there are a few popular ones. The PIE model stands for potential, importance, and ease. You basically score each test idea based on those three criteria.
So a high potential, high importance, easy to implement test would score pretty highly.
Exactly. Another option is the ICE method. That stands for impact, confidence, and ease. So you rate each idea, on a scale of 1 to 10 for each of those factors.
And there's the PXL framework too, right?
Yes. It uses like really specific criteria like traffic volume, conversion value, evidence to prioritize tests.
Okay, seems like there are a lot of options. How do we choose the right framework?
Honestly, the best framework depends on like your unique needs and priorities, but the key is to have a system in place for objectively evaluating your test ideas, right? And making sure you're focusing on the ones that are actually going to move the needle.
Okay, so once we have our testing roadmap in place, we need to kind of like assemble our A team. Establish some processes.
Precisely. So this might involve hiring like dedicated testing specialists or assigning those testing responsibilities to like existing team members. But regardless of your structure, clear communication is super important.
How do we make sure that everybody's on the same page?
Establish regular testing review meetings. Use standardized templates, for proposing new tests. And create like essential dashboards so you can track ongoing experiments and share those results transparently.
Yeah, and don't forget documentation.
Right. Create a system for documenting every test, regardless of the outcome. Include the hypothesis, the variations that you tested, the results, the analysis, the key takeaways. This creates a valuable knowledge base that you can refer back to, you can share with your team, and it helps you avoid repeating the same mistakes.
Right. It's like turning those individual tests into this collective body of knowledge that really drives improvement.
Exactly. And remember, don't keep those insights like siloed away in the testing team. Share them, marketing, product development, even customer service. The more you can integrate those learnings into your overall business strategy, the more powerful your testing program is going to be.
Now, one of the best ways to learn about A/B testing is to actually see it in action, right?
Mhm.
So let's wrap up this deep dive by looking at some real-world examples of how Shopify stores have used A/B testing to really boost their conversion rates, increase revenue, and just create a better experience for their customers.
These case studies are super inspiring, and they'll give you some practical tips that you can apply to your own store.
Okay, sounds great. Let's dive in. Our first case study features a fashion retailer who wanted to boost sales on their product pages. They noticed that visitors were kind of hesitant to add items to their cart, so they decided to test a few different changes.
Their original product page had a single add to cart button located kind of below the product description. So for the variation, they added a second add to cart button above the fold, right? So visitors could add the item without even having to scroll. And they also changed the button color from a subtle gray to a bright eye-catching red.
So what happened?
The results were impressive. The variation with the two add to cart buttons and the red button color, it increased add to cart rates by 15% and overall conversion rates by 10%.
Oh, wow, that's a pretty significant improvement. I mean, it's a great example of how making it easier for visitors to take action can directly impact your bottom line.
Right. Our next case study is an electronics store that was trying to reduce cart abandonment. They noticed that a lot of visitors were adding items to their cart, but then leaving without completing the purchase. So they wanted to test a few changes to the checkout process.
What specifically did they change?
Okay, their original checkout process required visitors to create an account before they could proceed. So for the variation, they offered guest checkout. That way, visitors could just buy without having to create that account. They also streamlined the checkout process just by, reducing the number of form fields and adding a progress bar so people could see how far along they were in the process.
Okay, so did those changes have a positive impact?
The results were huge. The variation with guest checkout, that streamlined checkout and that progress bar, it reduced cart abandonment by 20% and increased checkout completion rates by 15%.
Wow, those are some impressive numbers.
Mhm.
This really highlights the importance of removing those barriers,
Yeah.
right? And just making that checkout process as smooth and painless as possible.
Exactly. People are busy. They don't want to have to jump through hoops to buy something. Make it easy, make it enjoyable.
Okay, let's do one more case study. This one's about a home goods store that wanted to improve the performance of their email sign-up form. They weren't seeing a lot of visitors signing up for the email list, so they decided to experiment with a few different changes.
Gotcha. So their original email sign-up form was kind of at the bottom of their homepage, and it just blended in with the rest of the content. So for the variation, they moved that sign-up form up to the top of the page and made it much more visually prominent. And they also tweaked the copy to highlight the benefits of actually signing up, exclusive discounts and early access to new products.
Okay, so did this new prominent sign-up form work?
The results were amazing. The variation with the more prominent form and the benefit-focused copy, it increased email sign-up rates by 300%.
Wow, that's incredible. That really highlights the importance of making that sign-up form super easy to find, visually appealing, and really just persuasive.
Absolutely. You got to give people a reason to want to join that email list.
Now, these are just a few examples of how, real Shopify stores have used A/B testing to get those huge results.
Yeah, and the key takeaway here is that A/B testing, it's not just for big brands or companies with these massive budgets. Any Shopify store can benefit no matter your size, industry, or experience level.
So if you're not A/B testing already, now is the time to start. Honestly, it's one of the most powerful tools that you have at your disposal for improving your store's performance and hitting your business goals.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with just a few key takeaways to kind of help you get started and make A/B testing a successful part of your business.
Okay, awesome. What's the first one?
Start small. Don't try to, boil the ocean here, test everything at once. Pick one element, test it, analyze the results, iterate based on what you learn.
Keep it simple. I like it. What's next?
Second, focus on those high-impact elements, the things that are actually going to move the needle. Headlines, product descriptions, call to action buttons, images, pricing.
Okay, yeah, those are definitely super important. What else?
Third, follow a structured process, right? From hypothesis to analyzing the results. That way, you're getting reliable data.
Right, that structure is key. What's number 4?
Don't forget mobile optimization. I mean, so much e-commerce traffic comes from mobile devices these days, so make sure you're testing on desktop and mobile.
Oh, super important point.
Yeah.
Yeah, got to cater to those mobile users. Okay, what's the final takeaway?
This is a big one. Build a testing culture within your organization. Make it a part of your company's DNA, right? Empower your team to ask questions, experiment, learn from the data.
That's an awesome goal. And finally, I think it's important to remember that A/B testing, it's a journey, not a destination. It's a process of continuous improvement, right? So be patient, be persistent, and always be open to learning.
100%. And with that, I think we've pretty much covered everything you need to know about A/B testing for Shopify. But before we sign off, don't forget about Growth Suite.
Yes, Growth Suite. That powerful tool that's designed specifically for Shopify stores. It's got those built-in A/B testing capabilities, analytics dashboards, even some AI-powered features to help personalize the customer experience.
And it's free on the Shopify App Store.
So if you're ready to really level up your Shopify store, definitely go check out Growth Suite. You can find it on the Shopify App Store or visit their website at website address.
That's website address.
And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of Conversion Bible. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into A/B testing. We'll see you in the next one.
Let's jump into another case study. This one features a Shopify store that sells, those beautiful handmade ceramic mugs.
Ooh, I love a good mug. What were they testing?
Well, they wanted to see if they could, reduce their cart abandonment rate. They noticed that a lot of people were adding mugs to their cart, but not actually, completing the purchase.
So they wanted to figure out, why people were leaving, those virtual mugs at the checkout.
Exactly. Their original product page, it had a pretty standard layout. The product images, the description, and then, way down at the bottom, the shipping and return information.
Okay, so what did they change for the variation?
For the variation, they brought that shipping and return info, way up to the top, right below the product description. They figured, hey, maybe people are a little hesitant about shipping costs or the return policy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I know I personally always check the shipping costs before I buy anything online. Did that simple change actually make a difference?
Oh, you bet it did. They saw a pretty significant drop in their cart abandonment rate. Something like 15%.
Wow, that's a pretty big improvement for such a small tweak.
Right. It just goes to show that sometimes it's those little things that can make a big difference. Addressing those potential concerns up front can really put customers at ease and make them more likely to complete the purchase.
Totally. Okay, ready for another one?
Hit me.
Okay. This next case study features a Shopify store that sells those super cute customizable phone cases.
Ooh, fun. What were they testing?
They wanted to increase engagement and sharing on social media, get people talking about their products.
Okay, I see. Social proof is super powerful. So what was their original setup like?
The original product pages, they just had, those standard social sharing buttons, the ones for Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, that kind of thing.
Okay, pretty common setup. What did they try for their variation?
For the variation, they got a little more creative. They added a section on their product pages showcasing user-generated content, photos and videos from actual customers using those phone cases.
Ooh, that's smart, leveraging that authentic customer love. Did it work?
It totally did. They saw a 25% increase in social shares from their product pages. And they also noticed a small but noticeable uptick in conversion rates.
That's awesome. It shows that, real people using and loving your products is, the best advertising you could ask for.
Seriously, authenticity is key. All right, ready for our final case study?
Absolutely. Bring it on.
Okay, this one's about a Shopify store that sells, artisanal coffee beans.
Sounds delicious. What were they aiming to improve?
They wanted to increase average order value, get people to buy more coffee, basically.
Makes sense. Coffee lovers always need more coffee. What was their original approach?
Their original product page, It just showed, like, a single bag of coffee.
Yeah.
Various sizes, obviously. But yeah, that was pretty much it.
Okay, so what did they change for the variation?
For the variation, they added a section that showcased, like, different coffee bundles, like 3 bags of their most popular blends at a discounted price, or a starter kit with a mug, a grinder, and a bag of beans, that kind of thing.
Oh, I love those curated bundles. It's like, they're doing the thinking for you. So did those bundles entice people to, stock up on their coffee fix?
Oh, they totally did. Average order value went up by like almost 15% after implementing those bundles.
That's fantastic. It just goes to show, like, offering those convenient packages and maybe even a little bit of a discount can really incentivize customers to spend a little bit more.
Absolutely. I mean, who can resist a good coffee?
Yeah.
News, right? Well, I think these case studies have been like incredibly inspiring. They show the real power of A/B testing, no matter, what you're selling.
100%. And I think it's really encouraging for, Shopify store owners of all sizes to see that, like, you don't need some massive budget or like a team of data scientists to run effective A/B tests.
Totally. It's all about being strategic, being creative, and just having the willingness to experiment.
Yeah, use those tools, use the data, don't be afraid to try new things. You might just surprise yourself with the results.
I love that. Well, on that night, we're going to wrap up this episode of Conversion Bible. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you learned a ton, and we'll see you next time for another exciting deep dive into the world of conversion optimization. This podcast was powered by Growth Suite. Growth Suite helps you to run smart discount campaigns on your store. Test it for free on your Shopify store. Just land on the Shopify App Store now and test it for free.